I'm doxing that chatter. August, Jader, find him. I'm banging your mom. She's gonna have kids. We're gonna fill that home, okay? If your grandpa can't sell the home, we're gonna put some kids in it. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm dedicating the next 2 weeks of my life to, okay? So I'm gone starting tomorrow. I'll be back in 13 days. Your grandma's getting fat loads. But also, we need to find a way to bring down housing prices. We need to find ways to make homes more affordable. But also, you better not touch my goddamn home, because if I wanna have a 3-bedroom house for just me and my wife, then you better believe I'm gonna hang on to this property for the rest of my life. But it's a goddamn crime that these poor younger children can't afford to move out and get other homes. Like, I don't know why people just don't build homes, but they better not build them near my house, because I don't want my property value going down. And you better not bulldoze and make high-rise apartments, because nobody wants apartments. They want homes, but not my home. I'm here till I die, and I'm gonna live till I'm 97 years old because of all the healthcare that's available to keep these old people alive for an extra 10 years.
What do you make of Gary Stevenson's ascendancy and that sort of messaging that's happening in the UK?
Well, first, a frivolous point, which is...
Wait, do we know this guy? What have I watched this guy talk about before? I feel like I've seen him once or twice, but I don't remember what.
If you want to help with wealth redistribution, Gary, go out and spend some fucking money, right? I mean, he was earning like £2 or £3 million a year and only earning one pair of shoes, okay? And his mates from school were working in JD Sports. And I couldn't help thinking, reading the book, Gary, just go down to JD Sports and just buy a few pairs of shoes, help out your mates, okay? Get a hot tub, But his fundamental insight, unbelievably stingy. Do you not think? You read that book?
I haven't read it. I've seen him talk on.
Well, geez, Gary, just go out and, enjoy it, for crying out loud. Okay, I think you get that weird thing, actually, in banking, which is so much of your enjoyment stuff back then was covered by an entertainment budget, okay, that you got really, really resentful about spending your own money. You see what I mean? Most of us, the money comes in, 80% of it walks straight out again because we piss it up the wall. I haven't got an air fryer for the second bedroom, But there are people who kind of, if you're in that very corporate world where more or less all your fun is taken care of by some expense account, you actually find spending your money disproportionately painful. He's absolutely right in his insight that money is becoming unhealthily concentrated. In the two things I would say, he's absolutely right that economics uses these single representative agent models, which don't capture inequality, okay? I would argue personally, Gary, that you need to read up a bit about Georgism, which I think the great ideas of Henry George and the land value tax would actually take care of a lot of that, in my view, if you tax land ownership. Because property ownership is effectively, you are buying the right to impose taxes on the younger generation. So when people invested in gold, okay, it doesn't do anybody else any harm because I can make do without any gold. Okay, I'm not massively into bling, I'm not hugely into jewelry. Okay, we can all get by without gold. If there's a bloody a Dutch tulip boom, okay, I'll just switch to gladioli. Okay, but I can't substitute for property at some level. If your employer demands you work in a major city, okay, and land and commutable land is scarce. Other than the blimp, of course, where you could just live tethered above Berkeley Square, 400 feet up, okay? Other than your blimp solution.
Holy shit. Wait, that sounds fucking awesome. Why don't we have that? Why don't we have blimp cities?
There's no escaping the depredations of rent-seeking landowners. And what has happened is that we've sanctified wealth and been pretty mean on income. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've taxed away income discrepancies pretty energetically, but they aren't that big, okay? What I mean by that is...
True! Okay, I shit on Georges a lot because I don't like unrealistic political solutions, but in practice, I've never... Anything that I've read about like the land value tax, I'm not opposed to it ideologically at all. It seems fine. I'm not sure how you would do valuations for some things when figuring out like the value of like unimproved land or whatever. I'm not 100% sure in practice how that would work, but I think generally it seems like kind of based.
If you look at income inequality, even before tax, never mind corrected after tax, the number of people who earn 20 times median income, okay, they exist, but there are very few of them, and they pay an enormous amount of income tax. I mean, huge amounts of income tax. In other words, that's someone who's probably like a high-end lawyer in a pub.
This is why you get so fucked as a streamer. We are the ones who suffer. No, but if you're like somebody that works in like entertainment, if you're talent, you get really, really high 1099 or maybe even W-2 income, but woo, you get out the ass when it comes to taxes. And there's not really much you can do. You just kind of have to eat it as income. If you have wealth, if you're sitting on assets, there's a whole bunch of ways that you can accrue wealth and like do stuff to increase the wealth that you have in fancy, fun ways.
Partnership in, a London Magic Circle law firm. Now, there are a lot of people I'd rather the money went to than people in law firms, but nonetheless, those people pay a lot of tax, whatever you think about it, okay? By contrast, wealth inequality is monumental. I mean, there are people who, if they walked into a football stadium, every single person on average in that stadium would now be a multimillionaire simply because Bill Gates walked in. Okay, there aren't inequalities like that of that kind of extreme form in actual earned income. And yet we have this incredibly aggressive system of redistributing earned wealth. And yet we treat wealth that's actually resident in asset values and things as completely sacrosanct. And the problem is, until you actually get to that point where you start actually taxing, now Texas does it, amusingly, because you have quite heavy land taxes. So
land taxes or property taxes?
Ironically, what's often stereotyped, I think, unfairly as, the most conservative state in the Union, which in fact is not, okay, but, it's a highly conservative state, you actually pay quite a lot of tax on the value of the property you own. So the property taxes in Texas, I think around 2.5% if you own it.
Based. Property taxes are so based, and I think most economists like them too. It's just property tax is just a really good tax. Like, oh, you get that big, huge house is valued at $30 million. Wow, we're coming for some. We got some good tax we can levy on you here to fund the city. Hell yeah, we can. Hell yeah. Oh, you're not working right now? You don't earn any money? Oh, 2 fucking bags. You get that big old house. But the problem is that the middle class will fuck you here because you get some people who are in houses that they probably shouldn't be in anymore. But in America, we have this idea that once you've bought a house, you have a right to have your entire progeny live there for the rest of time until the heat death of the solar system or whatever. And nobody, and the idea of like, oh, well, I can't afford the taxes, so now I'm going to get kicked out of my home. If you can't afford the taxes, sell the home and move. So you can't even really do big property taxes like what would be economically nice to do.
Now, the great effect that has is that it makes property less expensive, because you have to pay tax on it, and it prevents you using property as an extractive store of wealth, okay? And the extent to which I think you have to argue that speculation in property has been absolutely has led to enormous redistribution of wealth, effectively, to the not necessarily very deserving old at the expense of the hardworking young, is... I just find it impossible to dispute. Okay, I'm 59, by the way. I did okay. I surfed the wave. I didn't surf it very well. I now...
Loans make it that way. No, like a 30-year loan keeps them there. Now, the problem is that I think there's two issues. Is that there's two issues. One, I hate talking about this topic because it's always an unpopular point, even amongst you readers. There's two issues. One is that people view a house as their most important store of wealth, which I think is bad for a variety of reasons. It's not a easily liquidable asset. It's hard to like pull any money out of it at all. Like it's a undiversified investment. It could go up or down, subject to particular forces in a market like natural disaster, whatever. So that's one issue. But the second issue is that people see homes as kind of like a status thing or life indicator. And once you've moved to a certain like level of home, you don't ever want to downgrade or move out. And people do not have a mind for appropriate levels of home consumption. They always just kind of want more. So for instance, if I think of, a graph here doesn't work. If I'm a college student and I go to school, right? What do I need? Well, I need a place where I have like a room where I can sleep and maybe a desk to study. Okay. And that's it. All right. My housing needs are very small. I can have like 2-3 roommates if I need to split costs. I have very low money. I just need a place to like live while I study and get educated, right? If I'm going to grow up now and I get a job, well, maybe I need an apartment where I only have one roommate. If I have a good job, maybe no roommates, or maybe I want a place where I can live with a partner, right? So, just hopefully not like a bunch of random roommates from college. Hopefully a place that's like a little bit nicer. I've got a little bit more money now, and then a place that like where me and my partner can live, ideally, or maybe me and my own, right? Now let's say that we move into like the family stage of life. Okay, well, for family stage of life, maybe I actually want like a house. I don't want to live in the city anymore. I don't want an apartment, or maybe I want like a 3-bedroom apartment, maybe something bigger, right? You need a lot more space. You might want like something in the suburbs, right? You might want something like this. But the issue is once you're in this family stage, nobody thinks about, in America, in our culture, nobody thinks about going back to this type of home. Once you've made it to the big family house, when all the kids grow up and move out, parents will keep that home. And this is an incredibly ruinous thing, dead weight loss on homes in the country. Because now you have 2 retired people living in a 3-4 bedroom home that's way bigger than they need, but they feel like, well, I need a place for their kids to visit if they come in from out of town or whatever. And that's, the problem is like there's limited amount of space, there's a limited amount of homes, there's a limited amount of everything when it comes to real estate. But the idea of moving out of your home, that's our family house. Like our children were born here is like inconceivable to, it's like inconceivable to a lot of Americans, I think. Empty nesters typically downsize, or at least from my experience, that is true. I'm actually curious, is there polling on that? Maybe that's just, in my experience, that's people hate downsizing and they'll resist it as much as they can. Is there a way to look up if that's true or not? What would I even look for? Do people normally sell home once kids move out? Is there a number on this? Like how many people do it? I don't know what this is sourcing. This is from 2024. Just a third of empty nesters downsize after children leave homes. According to Regency Living survey of 2,500 empty nesters, 70% are remaining in the family home even after their children have flown the nest. Okay, I don't know how reliable this survey is, but I mean, I would say anecdotally, this tracks with my experience. 52% of empty nesters are living in 3-bedroom homes. This is so bad. Oh my God. This is in the UK? Oh, British. I would imagine it's even worse in the US, but maybe it's better. I don't know. If anybody finds a source on this, link me.
Own, a couple of flats. I don't own a house, nothing blingy. Okay. I now own a couple of flats sort of outright. But there are people.
What do you recommend they downsize to? A smaller home? Yeah, something that would make sense for 2 people to live in.
Flats. I don't own a house, nothing blingy. Okay. I now own a couple of flats sort of outright. But there are people who bought a house in 1974 whose children, this is literally a case I know of. Okay. So there's a woman living on her own.
This headline title is like, I don't know if this is like heavily editorialized because it's in my direction. So be warned. This is in 2024. Baby boomers bought up many of the big homes across the U.S. when they were raising their families. Now they're staying put, even though their kids are all grown up. Boomers are on top of the housing market where tight inventory, higher interest rates, and steep prices are making homeownership less affordable for the average family. Many of these older homeowners paid off their mortgages on properties that have appreciated tremendously in value. Some are happy with their big houses. Others like to downsize, but are deterred by the same high costs that are restricting other prospective buyers on lower rungs of the housing economy. Many are working longer or planning an active retirement and are in no rush to move to a retirement community. About 28% of all U.S. homes with 3 or more bedrooms are owned by people between the ages of 60 and 78, living by themselves or with another adult. Jesus. Millennials living with children own just 14% of these bigger homes. A recent Fannie Mae survey found that most Americans 60 and older don't intend to ever move. I'm so sorry. I don't know. I'm trying not to be mean, okay? Am I out of touch? 3 bedrooms seems just fine for 2 people. 1 master bedroom and 2 small rooms that might get used as an office/hobby room/dining room/guest space. All I'm saying is that you guys just want way too much. You can't have it. You can't have it always. You can't have it so that like, well, if I want to have an extra 1 to 5 bedrooms in my home, I'm being a little hyperbolic, but if I want to have an extra 1 or 2 bedrooms, I should be able to have that. But also, we need to find a way to bring down housing prices, and we need to find ways to make homes more affordable. But also, you better not touch my goddamn home, because if I want to have a 3-bedroom house for just me and my wife, then you better believe I'm going to hang on to this property for the rest of my fucking life. But it's a goddamn crime that these poor younger children can't afford to move out and get other homes. Like, I don't know why people just don't build homes, but they better not build them near my house, because I don't want my property value going down. And you better not bulldoze and make high-rise apartments, because nobody wants apartments. They want homes, but not my fucking home. I'm here till I die, and I'm going to live till I'm 97 years old because of all the healthcare that's available to keep these old people alive for an extra 10 years. Anyway.
In a 5-bedroom house not far from where I live.
How many bedrooms do I have? I have 2 bedrooms. How mad are you? But I live in an apartment building, so suck it.
Probably worth, with the garden, 4.5 million, okay, or 3.2 or something like that. She has no money to spend. I mean, she has all this money tied up in a totally illiquid form of wealth. So,
listen to this guy. This is a DGGer.
She's kind of going down Lidl and comparing the price of lemons, even though she owns 3.5. Her children are kind of worried about how they replace the shock absorbers on their car. And then the argument would be, why should those children go out and work really hard? What I do, to be absolutely honest, is get into debt, go off to Barbados, and wait for your mum to die.
Right. Me.
But nothing you do working, let's say, as a school teacher. So there's this great book, you must get her on, called The Inheritocracy.
Okay.
By a woman called Eliza. Oh, God, I'll remember it in a second.
You're becoming increasingly left-wing here, Rory.
No. I'm pretty right-wing in terms of people's earnings, because you have actually earned them. So Henry George, effectively, the way to understand Henry George is it was an approach to life which actually had a brief but extraordinary success, popular success in the United States. The game of Monopoly is...
Destiny, but you understand that pretty much all millennials saw their parents have these giant houses with extra rooms and good living, but now they are supposed to go to 1-bedroom tiny share, or like 17 roommates to live in a house. It just feels it's not realistic. I just don't know what to tell you. Like everybody had roommates when I was growing up. And like I said, now I'm old enough, I've said this a million times, to see people like lie about what it was like 20 years ago. Everybody had roommates. Like if you're going to college and you don't have a roommate, you're a rich kid. Like that's just what you were. You're a rich kid. Or you have an incredibly generous student aid package. But if you're dorming in college, you almost certainly have roommates. If you're living on your own in college, you almost certainly have roommates. The idea that you can afford your own place while you're going to school, or depending on where you work right after school, that you're gonna have your own place, that was never like an expected thing. I don't know why, but like Zoomers and I don't know if millennials do that. Maybe younger millennials try to do this weird historical rewriting where they're like, oh, like back in the day you could buy a house immediately, or back in the day you'd always no, you didn't. You had roommates, bro. You had it made, or you were living in a really shitty apartment, or you were really far from where you wanted to be if you didn't have to have roommates having an apartment growing up. Or I say growing up, when you were like young adultish.
Based on, it's trying to interest people in George's principles of extractive rent seeking, okay? And the basic principle of Henry George is that it's now, I'm going to qualify this. It's extremely free market and capitalistic with regard to the fruits of your labor. Okay, anything you do, anything you build on your land is
Aren't property taxes in Texas considered regressive because it's a flat tax? There's a cap on value and assessment challenges. Or you say with more money? I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know if I would say they're flat taxes. It's a tax on the value of your home, which I imagine is probably going to scale up depending upon the value of your property and the amount of wealth you have. No?
yours to keep. But it's effectively highly socialistic in terms of land ownership. And
I think having a roommate in college is different from being in your 30s and having a roommate. Yeah, but if you're in your 30s and you have a roommate, you're probably fucking up somewhere. I don't see that in the data anywhere where there's like an exceptional amount of people in their 30s who are forced to have roommates. I think most people who are older millennials are either in homes or live on their own, or like from all the numbers that I've seen, like the aggregate numbers seem to track about where people should be.
Build on your land is yours to keep. But it's effectively highly socialistic in terms of land ownership and arguably ownership of limited resources.
Right. My parents are an interesting case in their late 60s, early 70s, and we grew up in a 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath rancher. They want to downsize now, but no one else lives there, and they don't want to maintain the property anymore. But they were working-class people and don't have a bunch of cash to purchase another place without selling their place first. Can't you just like do both at the same time? Like you're buying another place and you sell your current place as part of the purchase of the other thing? Destiny, what's the problem with expecting to live in your house for a long time? That's just an unworkable scenario where we're expecting that when a family buys a home, we need to design all of our social and economic policy around making sure that we have like dynasties living in homes for the rest of their existence. With what money, Destiny? With the money you get from selling your home? I don't understand. What?
Your labor. Okay, anything you do.
But they didn't sell it yet. You can do both at the same time. This is a negotiation between banks. Sorry, hold on. That sounds mean. I'm not being mean. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean. I know this because we sold and bought a home in this manner. When you're selling a house and you're buying another house, like the banks can negotiate between themselves and yourself as you're like reaching an agreement or whatever between closers and all that to like have a money transfer. It's not like you have to have like the cash in hand from the first sale and then be homeless for a day and then go to the bank and then have cash in hand for the second one or whatever.
It's extremely free market and capitalistic with regard to the fruits of your labor. Okay, anything you do, anything you build on your land is yours to keep. But it's effectively highly socialistic in terms of land ownership and arguably ownership of limited resources. So a Georgist would also tax oil, for example. Anything that's... And the argument is, you didn't make those things. That would have been in the 19th century. They would have said, this is God's creation, and you're only, you don't own it because you didn't make it. You don't have the right to own this thing because you didn't make it. What you are is a custodian of it, and you pay...
Why are people forced to leave? Is there something wrong with living in one area your whole life? Not everyone is rich enough to be a nomad. You don't have to be rich to be a nomad, and selling a home and moving to another home doesn't make you nomadic. The problem, there's nothing wrong with living in one area your whole life if you want to, but the problem is if you're trying to redesign like parts of a city, or if you're trying to like expand parts of a city, and you have a bunch of people in a certain area that are like, actually, I won't be able to afford that, so this has to remain forever, and I don't actually want you to be able to do anything and change this because my family wants to live here forever, and if you do, this is going to increase the value or increase the whatever too much, and so it's just not sustainable to have it so that like, oh, this family bought this here and now we have to maintain like their ability to be here for the rest of their lineage. For House Smith to be there forever.
Make it. You don't have the right to own this thing because you didn't make it. What you are is a custodian of it, and you pay commensurate tax on the land you own. Okay? Whereas you would in purist Georgia circles, you have no income tax at all. Okay, that's probably a bit extreme, but it's sometimes called geoism, and there's also a school of thought which is kind of environmental Georgism, which is you tax the consumption, or you tax anything where you rivalrously consume something of which.
What if their current house is hard to sell? My grandpa's home has been on sale for 2 years now after he died because it needs a lot of renovation, so there isn't much market for it. Genuine question. Oh, in that case, you should just change every single thing I just said. And I changed my whole mind on every single thing I just said. Forget everything I just said. Thank you for your example of there might be a home that's hard to sell. I actually also suggest that, like, I think all cars should be banned and people should only be allowed to take public transport. Because I was talking yesterday, because some guy was like, do you think it's right that kids get licenses at 16, or should it be 15 or 14, or should we delay it to 18? And I was like, I don't know. I think like probably 16 is an okay age to get a driver's license. And then one guy was like, what about for children that have narcolepsy and fall asleep while driving? Do you think it's okay for them to drive? Would that change your mind at all? And I was like, oh, you're right. No, actually, nobody should have a driver's license because some people might have narcolepsy. And actually, I changed my whole position on it, and we should only have public transport.
More can't be made.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And what happens in Texas, quite interestingly, is all these Californians apparently.
Bro, I'm just wondering, not making an argument against your position. What are you wondering? If a house is hard to sell, you have to wait a while, then you wait a while. That doesn't change anything I'm saying. Some people are unlucky and nobody wants to buy their house at some point in time. Then you just wait. What am I possibly supposed to say that? If you can't sell your home right now because it sucks to sell it or whatever, then you're fucked, I guess, for a while. You don't sell. That doesn't change my broader argument. I don't know. What do you want me to say?
Right. Yep.
Okay. And what happens in Texas, quite interestingly, is all these Californians.
I'm gonna f your mom. I'm doxing that chatter. August, Jader, find him. I'm banging your mom. She's gonna have kids. We're gonna fill that home, okay? If your grandpa can't sell the home, we're gonna put some kids in it. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm dedicating the next 2 weeks of my life to, okay? So I'm gone starting tomorrow. I'll be back in 13 days, okay? Your grandma's getting fat loads, all right?
Move to Texas. And they go, God, the land here is really cheap. Let's buy loads of it. And then 6 months later, they get hit with a massive tax bill for their land ownership. And they go, what the hell's going on here? We bought this land because it's cheap. And the Texans reply, that's why it's cheap.
Exactly why
you pay 2.5% tax on it.
Did you ever look at that issue with fighter pilot seats that was designed for average?
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. So that's similar. That's analogous to Gary Stevenson. Have you had Gary on, by the way?
I haven't. He was supposed to come on in London.
No! Why is he talking? Wait. That sounded so friendly. He hasn't talked about it in 9 minutes. Hold on.
A couple of months ago, when we last had you on.
I hope he's out shoe shopping instead. I'm in advertising. Meet me halfway, Gary.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting.
If you want to redistribute wealth, it does help if rich people occasionally go out and buy something.
Yeah, there's an interesting. There's an interesting debate going on about whether or not Gary Stevenson is basically thinly veiled performance art. That you've got this, the get up, the same pair of joggers, all the rest of the stuff. It is. I don't know. It must be difficult to have.
I think he's okay. Apart from his consumption patterns, I think he's fundamental. So there are a few things where the problem with all these models is that the assumptions of the model that are necessary to simplify the model eventually come back to bite you. And looking at average wealth as if it's somehow representative of, that a successful
mean and variance is not the same
getting richer on average. The fact that for 30 years in the US and the UK, we presented rising property prices as a good news story. Is monstrous. I mean, that was just the most monstrous misrepresentation of information. You don't say gasoline's gone up, but good news, you've got a full tank of petrol, so your car's not now more valuable, right?
Is it?
Well, but it's not the same thing at all. That was a silly thing to say, I think. He's right on his point. Maybe he'll get there. But I hope he gets to what I was talking about before. Nobody wants to acknowledge that you have very opposed forces when it comes to home stuff that nobody wants to talk about. And that is that rising home prices are good for homeowners, which is actually most people are in an owned home. But it's really bad for people looking for places. And falling prices are, the exact opposite of that. And people want to act like you can make it so everybody can win. And you can't really do that.
Is it a case of kind of a luxury belief that the sort of people who would be writing and consuming those and understanding those sorts of stories are likely to already be people who own property? Yeah. So their lesson is not going to be, it's going to be hard to get onto
You're absolutely true. Even worse, of course, every single MP in London throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s was basically heavily invested in the property market because they got a massive perk. They got their mortgage paid.
Dodgy Dave.
On a London home. So there wasn't a single person there with the possible exception of someone, was Ken Livingstone ever an MP? I'm not sure he was. But apart from a few very, very principled leftists or possibly a couple of Georgists in the Conservative Party, it's a weird sort of philosophy because it's both left-wing and right-wing. And so it has its...
At the same time.
Milton Friedman was a fan. So was... God, I always forget her name. Married to Malcolm McLaren, the fashion designer, Vivienne Westwood. She was also a Georgist.
Okay.
You get Richard Nixon, Winston Churchill.
Wow.
It has its adherents
Really
everywhere.
crosses the spectrum.
But what happened in the model was that Adam Smith thought there were three sources of wealth creation, which was land, capital, and labour. And future generations of economists thought it's too complicated having three things because it makes the maths difficult. So we'll pretend that capital and land are the same thing, and they're not. Because capital is potentially limitless and you can create more of it. Land is effectively an artificial bottleneck. It's a rent-seeking device.
Traveling should be about the pleasure of the trip and not the stress of